Greetings, everyone. My name is Stephen Neely. I'm your co-host for the virtual Dalcroze meetup. This is meetup number 51. 51 hours of these little meetups. We're super excited about it and really proud of the community that I really think we can say that we've put together. We're so happy to see all of you here tonight or this morning, depending on where you are in the world. We have some dear friends with some really interesting topics to talk about tonight. Welcome to all of you. I want to introduce my colleague, Veronica Bileski, my co-founder and co-host of the meetup. Veronica, do you have some agenda for us tonight?
Yes, and Stephen, if you could make me co-host so I
Oh,
can.
for goodness sakes. Absolutely.
Yeah, we are going to hear from Rebecca and Sharon, and we're so happy to have them. I don't think the announcements are stay tuned. We're working on the 2023 schedule, so this is our last scheduled thing for 2022, and we'll see you in the new year, which seems very early to be saying that because we haven't even hit Thanksgiving yet, but this is our last real event for this year. And yeah, I think we can do the breakout rooms, Stephen. Maybe
All right. I'll just say the plans for next year are as exciting as have been. We've got all sorts of cool people and interesting ideas, and there's been just a really steady crowd of good friends who keep coming, and so we are excited to keep hosting and trying to rally us all together. Our tradition, as most of you know, has been at the top of these meetings to create a couple quick breakout rooms and just meet each other for a very short amount of time. So I'm going to quickly make just, I think at this point, just 2 rooms. When you get to the room, please introduce yourself, say, where do you live, and who do you teach? And if you, or adjust it to say whatever you want to say. But the general things is we just try to introduce ourselves. We say, oh, I live here and I work with these people, or I used to work with these people, or I wish I worked with these people. So however you want to describe it is all acceptable. I'm going to call you back in 3 minutes, exactly 3 minutes. It's going to go quick. Ready, set, go. Well, it looks like everybody's back. Welcome back,
some
everyone.
friends from the other side of the world.
I know we've got Canada and Hong Kong and Australia is represented, and then a number of people from the States scattered around. We got West Coast and East Coast here in the States, and so welcome everyone. I think that we're ready to hear a little bit of presentation for the evening. So is Rebecca
Rebecca's gonna go first. Yeah.
Excellent. I think there's just 2, we just have 2 presenters. So Veronica, I don't know what you had told them, but I had told Rebecca 7 to 10 minutes we should have.
Great. Let's do it.
There you go.
Change my little timer so that I know where I am. Okay, so I'm Rebecca Hampel. I live in Austin, Texas, and I am a singer and a movement specialist. And I am here to share how I use Dalcroze ideas and movement in my voice studio in a private setting. So one of the things that we use Dalcroze for is to sort of promote and encourage musicianship and musicality. And there are many ways that you can be able to do that with within a private voice studio. But I want to focus today on using movement as a diagnostic tool for the teacher and for the singer to be able to have tools to know what's going on with them technically, and then to move on into musicality and musicianship. So in my opinion, the voice does what the body does and vice versa. We've all seen in Dalcroze, like eurythmics classes, everybody here has been in a eurythmics class. When we ask a student to move, the teacher can really make an observation about how the music is moving through the student, and you can really see when something stops. And you can do the same thing in a private voice studio. I use movement in addition to doing that. I use it as a distraction to help to be able to release unnecessary tension. So as a human being, we need to have some level of tension or we're going to just be in a blob on the floor. But we want to make sure that we don't have any extra tension that's interfering with the technical production of our voice or with the flow of the music. And often if a singer or really anyone else is having some kind of a vocal issue or a problem, focusing on that problem can only really just increase it. I like to use movement to be able to help distract that and make things fun and sort of take the fear out of whatever it is that they're doing. So we talk about the body as the first instrument, and that's true for everyone, but singers actually have their instrument inside of their body. So we need to be a little bit aware of that when we're singing and when we're moving. In addition to that, singers often have to move on stage. We have requirements that we have to be able to move. We have staging and blocking choreography. We have to do language, sometimes in a 45-pound dress. And all of those things, if we can enable the student to be aware of what they're doing on stage and to be aware of what they're doing in their body and how to be able to utilize movement to help them to produce a free sound rather than to hinder them from doing it. Conversely, or in addition, one of the things that we have to do as singers, as performers on stage, is go past being able to move with the music and move not with the music. Because as much as you in the audience are hearing the music, those of us on stage in this moment are not actually technically supposed to be hearing it. So we don't want to be waving our fans in time with a Libiamo and in Traviata or something like that. We want to make sure that we can have the music side of us, be able to sing well, and then move naturally with all of that happening. I like to be able to use movement as an observation tool. So you've all seen people clap in a Dalcroze class where they just clap like this, and you can see that that's not moving. Whereas if they're clapping in a circular motion or in that sort of way, you can see that the music is moving for them. And as I said before, I really believe that the body does what the voice does and the voice does what the body does. So I try to utilize that in my lesson. I like to start with the known. So I will help the student find an activity that they know, like anything, really anything that's not singing actually. So dancing, painting, sports of some kind, bowling, swimming, tennis, lacrosse, anything that they're comfortable with, and they're comfortable with those motions. So it can be something athletic or not necessarily, swinging on a swing set, and then I have them do that motion first and watch how they do that motion without singing. And then I have them do that motion at the same time as when they're singing, and inevitably it'll change. So you can see when the singing comes in that starts to affect their movement. And then when you go from the known, you go to the unknown and visualize ourselves no longer human on a gravity plane. So say we're doing bowling or throwing a ball, we can throw the ball and the ball we can imagine it turning into a bird and flying away, because we can utilize that for ourselves and our bodies can feel that. After we go from the known to the unknown, we can go through experience and analysis, look at their movement, talk to them about it, have them look at it, help them figure it out, so that when they're in the practice room, they can watch themselves in a mirror. I don't know if this is the case in other instrument studios. Maybe you guys can tell me. Are there usually mirrors? They're all the time in singing studios. So we can watch ourselves while we're singing, and we can start to learn to see how the movement is affected by our singing. And you can use things like time, space, and energy, crucis, anacrucis, metacrucis, flow, all those different kinds of things to help them to learn to analyze their music. So I've blathered on enough about this and talking, so let's try some of it. So let's stand up. I'm going to give you some activities for small spaces, because in a perfect world, we all have a gigantic space to be able to have our studio in, but that doesn't always happen. So I'm going to try to get you, let's see if I can stand this up. Some ideas for, okay, some ideas for small spaces. So all the movements that I'm giving you, you really only need a bubble about the same size as a person's arms, maybe a little bit bigger. Most people have that available in their studio. So the first thing I want to try, for you all to try, is take a bowling ball. And I want you to actually sing and try this. We're going to take a bowling ball and throw it down the alley. Great. Now make sure that you see the bowling ball in your hand and throw it down the alley. Watch it go all the way, and you just got to strike. It's whatever you need. Okay, can I see that again? Awesome. All right, so now you're going to sing something while you have the bowling ball. So let's just do a big sigh. Ready? So I'll do it first. You have the bowling ball, you look at it, you know where you're going. Whee! And watch it go. Oh, you guys are so good. All right, so some of the things that a student will do in this situation, and you can watch it happen. I'll turn sideways so you can see. They'll stop. Whee! Like that. They'll stop the ball. So practice doing that. See what that feels like. Stop the motion. Have no follow through. Yeah. Do you feel the difference? Yeah. Now do it with the motion and the follow through. Whee! Great. You guys are doing this all. I can see these beautiful imaginary birds or light energy or whatever coming out of the end of your bowling ball and going on forever and ever. But now your bowling ball turns into something that can just go on and on and on and on and on. So see that happen. Try it. Ready? And whee! And watch it go to the edge of. Awesome. Good. All right, now, sometimes you don't even have room for that. So another one that I want to try is to use opposites. So that one just was exactly the motion that I wanted. It was exactly the extension that I wanted. Sometimes we need to do an opposite. So you probably have all seen an actual person or a joke when they go like this really high and they want to reach up and they stick their chin up and everything goes up. You want things to be opposite. So you're going to sort of find a standing position with your legs kind of wide if you can, and just squat down and put your arms up like that and then back up again. Make sure it's nice and comfortable. You're nice and loose. Yep. And so you can do that. We'll do that one really fast. You can do, I'll just do it. Go ahead, try that. Good. Now if I do this, can you hear the difference in my voice and see a difference in the movement? You try it. Stop your arms at the top, but keep singing. Oh, look at that. Nice. And then come back down again. You can also see where the action happens, where they'll go squat down and wait to start singing. Or so you can see the connection between the two of them together. Do I have time for one more? No one's stopping me. So I'm going to keep on going.
Let's do it.
All right, so the last one is one that you can use for really really complicated things. So can you see this little don-don? See how it goes back and forth? So I can't make the arms move. These are your arms. I can't make them move on their own. The only way I can make it move is with moving your body, right? So you're gonna do that. Let your arms just flop. Yep. And go nice and slow, bounce, and let them just really flop. Good. Now you can sing, it's not back and forth. It's not like this. Your arms aren't doing anything. So if I stop moving my body, my arms stop moving. If I move my body, my arms move. So they're really just flopping around. The more you sort of whack yourself in the ribs with them. Yeah. So you can sing anything complicated or simple in this position. So if you think of something for yourself that you do on your instrument that you can sing, and start going for it. And if you can see yourself in the mirror or the camera mirror, what happens to your body? Keep looking straight ahead with your head and just move your arms. Yep. Yep. All right, so if I do it, one of the things that I see happen is they start to do this. So now I'm moving my arms and my body's not doing it. And then it starts to become kind of out of sync. So the more tense or disconnected you come from the body being loose, and move around like that, the more you're going to see they're trying to do it. Or you'll see people's whole bodies move like that without their hands even moving. It's kind of a fast version. But I think that's the end of my time.
Thank you.
There's so much in there. It'll be extremely easy for us to say hi about all of that. All right, Veronica.
Thank you, Rebecca. Sharon, we are ready to hear from you whenever you have a chance to sit down.
Okay, all right. Sure. I talked to the people in my breakout room to say who I was, and I'm coming down, not coming down, I'm here from Georgetown, Ontario, which is about an hour outside Toronto, so I'm very much connected with the city of Toronto and also with the country. I'm in an ideal spot. So I'm going to talk to you tonight about some of the work that I did in my thesis, the dissertation that I wrote on aspects of holistic education that are apparent in Dalcroze pedagogy. And holistic education, I'm going to read some of this for you because I can get all my ideas out and I don't forget stuff. Holistic education, refers to education that enriches the student's perspectives, attitudes, and sense of self by making or strengthening personal connections with the known and unknown people, with prior conceptual sets of knowledge, with related or unrelated domains of learning, with diverse living beings, and with nature and the natural elements, fire, water, air, earth, and sometimes spirit. So it encompasses all of those connections and all of those relationships. Jay Miller, who was my thesis overseer, describes holism as a way of being, embracing all aspects of humanity and one's relationship with and within the world. The underlying principle is that the development of these relationships leads to increased awareness, compassion, and discernment of truth. Holistic education encompasses the mind, education of the mind, the body, and the spirit. As students of Dalcroze pedagogy, education of the mind and body is assuredly present in every lesson, but do we also provide spiritual experiences? So my doctoral quest was to qualitatively determine whether the pedagogy includes spiritual education, but first I had to explain exactly what that is, because people have very different ideas when you say spiritual, some people think right away of church or as something very personal. You can't ask me that question. Or so I went about having to find out what people are saying about spirituality. And it's general consensus now is that indeed it is part of the holistic education as we understand it academically, that being the education of the whole child, the whole person, and not something like integrated learning, which is a different kind of learning experience. Integrated learning experiences, when you're learning music and art and reading and science and math all at the same time, does not necessarily, it can, but it does not necessarily encompass a holistic education per se, unless the student is moved somehow or transformed, or their way of knowing themselves, their relationship. Something has to have a eureka moment or an aha moment, or say, wow, I never understood it like that before, to encompass that idea of awe and awareness. So one of the problems when writing or talking about spirituality is that it is conceptually understood differently by the diversity of cultures and communities that are represented in the audience. In his classes, Dr. Miller speaks of spirituality in education as timeless learning, as being in flow and of knowing with every cell in our bodies. Lodevik, Liu, and Kentel, actually physical education educators here at the University of Toronto, describe spirituality as a fundamental everyday life process involving a joy of living, sacrifice and love for others, and a connection to self, others, nature, and to a larger meaning or purpose. Ron Miller, different Miller, suggests spirituality is the attitude and the practice of suspending our imagined reality in order to stand in wonder and awe at that which unfolds and emerges beyond our conceptual grasp. So it's an ineffable essence that we don't have any way of knowing fully. So it has to be part of your acceptance. I just realized that I forgot to put my visual up. I have a PowerPoint that I was going to put up for you, but I just want to finish this thought. Glaser, one more person who describes spirituality in education, explains it as attending to the present, attending to what presents itself, not taking things for granted, taking care, being careful, seeing in each moment, this very moment, the opportunity for transformation. Spirituality in education addresses both the inner sense of being and the outer connection that one feels with life in all of its many manifestations. Too often, teachers approach education as preparation for their students' successful integration into a society that is based on economic growth, rather than teaching for awareness, discernment, and compassion. Just a note about children's faces, that they belie their feelings. They have not yet learned how to maintain a poker face, to protect their vulnerabilities by disguising their true feelings, and to ultimately even denying them by the time they become 14, 15, perhaps. Choosing instead a path that leads to financial success and personal independence while deprioritizing their own need for spiritual connection, growth, and renewal. Does standard-driven education play a part in relegating education for compassion and awareness to a frivolous use of time and money? Do teachers and principals risk discipline action if they veer even a little bit away from standardized curriculum in order to include spiritual developments, such as a walk in the forest or a break in the playground on a warm fall day? So I'm just going to try and get that PowerPoint up for you. There we are. Okay. You should be looking at a whole screen right now. It might be a little bit slow. My computer's old.
We got it. We can see.
So I'm just, got it? Okay, there's also the link, and I can put this in the chat if you like. Actually, I can't right now because I'm not looking at my chat, of where to get my thesis so that you can read this 240-page essay on spirituality in education, in particular in Delco's education. I married the two.
And we're happy to send
married
that
holistic
too.
Yeah. So I love this cartoon. So I just want to make sure you can see that as well. This is my take on standardized testing. And some thoughts about holistic education and spirituality in education. Spirituality in music education for the purposes of this talk, referring to a practice, an element of personal philosophy. While soul is understood as that personal place wherein we can find wisdom, solace, love, self, or a connection to universal truth. In order for spiritual growth to occur, the student must be given the opportunity to pursue avenues for making deep connections and for awakening unto their true selves, rather than being pressured with achievement and knowledge acquisition. Holistic education seeks to develop students' spirituality as well as their intellectual and physical abilities. Job suggests that we consider music as a manifestation of inherent human spirituality, and that creativity in general is born out of spirituality. She writes, "It might be possible that spirituality has its own languages and that music is only one of them. So the question is chiefly not how do we talk about spiritual music, but how does music talk for the soul?" For my doctoral research, I explained that spiritual education and asked several Delcros teachers and students to tell me about a time when they experienced soulful learning in a Delcros class. And here are some of the comments from my chapter 9, the discussion. Anne had been part of the Monday night plastique anime group in Toronto. She was unable to participate one evening due to health reasons. As she watched the students move, she suddenly imagined. Sorry, do you guys all know what plastic anime is? Should I explain that, Stephen? Do we know?
I think this group is pretty up to speed, actually. So for anybody who's watching after the fact, we have plastique anime has come up in many of the past meetups, so you can follow the index and check in on that. Keep going, Sharon. This is great.
So she watched her partners move and suddenly imagined their bodies to be planets, moving with the same time, space, and energy relationships as planets moving in relation to each other. She said, all of a sudden I could understand and I could see the relation to each other, see the relation of time, space, and energy that exists in these exercises in a very meaningful and almost tangible way, acquiring an embodied understanding of the relationships between time, space, and energy is one of the foundational principles of Delcros pedagogy. Jacques Delcros was primarily concerned with the study of rhythmic movement and applying the kinesthetic understanding to music. She went on to describe her observations of the plastic anime performance and commented, the music, the movement, the timing, it was the essence of Delcros pedagogy. And by this, she was referring to the continuously unfolding and interactive relationships of these three elements, time, space, and energy, and to the consequent realization of the creative imagination. For Anne, the process and practice of plastic anime represents personal expression and growth. She conjectured that the continuous transformation of music into movement can be thought of as the continuous transformations that we experience along our personal life journeys as human beings. She said, you are, in fact, each person is a plastique anime. Zane experienced a deeply personal connection between movement and music when he began his Delcros studies. His first Delcros experience changed the way he understood his relationship with music. Until that point, he was intent on studying piano performance and pedagogy and was enrolled in a Master of Piano Performance program. The moment when Zane encountered the deep connection between body, artistry, and music was transformational for him. He described the direction from the teacher as being very vague. The students were only told to just express what they hear. Had the directive been more precise, he may not have had the same epiphanic experience. He says, and I suddenly realized an epiphany, my footsteps or the body that I was trying to move, the nuances I'm trying to move to, at that instance, I felt I was the music. And the more musically I stepped, the more musical I became. He discovered the natural connection between music and movement, and through that connection, he was able to connect with himself as an artist in a new way, enabling an increased capacity for musically artistic communication. Zane recalled his teachers telling him to step musically, and he realized how I am musical has everything to do with how I move my body. Zane felt the connection through moving to music, through stepping musically. in a way that he would never have understood it otherwise. And there was no longer a separation. He was the music. Monique believes that Delcroze exercises can facilitate valuable personal connections. The students were asked to assign different meanings to objects that were scattered on the floor. There were scarves, an umbrella, a water bottle, a ruler, and to manipulate the objects as if they had other qualities. Due to negative growing experiences, Monique had experienced firsthand the crippling effects of self-imposed limitations. Monique connected the assignment of meanings with the objects with a reassignment of her own self-perception. It's really to the limit of your imagination, she said. The embodied experience of the objects lesson enabled her to become more aware of the effects of her own psychological barriers. It was through the exercise of embodiment, the application of meaning in this case, that she was able to make that deep metaphorical connection. Paul is an established music teacher at the university level. He had recently discovered Delcroze pedagogy as I was making preliminary pilot investigations to the study. When I asked him if he had encountered any personal connections in Delcroze classes, he described this experience. Just discovering the things that there are in a lovely, free way, and that's actually learning as well, so it's another kind of vulnerability. Nobody's asking us to do anything, we're just expected to walk however we want and run somewhere in the corner and not be right, not be correct, not be judged in any way, just to do it. And that's a kind of freedom that you can get, just that you can get to just play and find out. In the playtime, to find out, oh, I think I could play with this now, and another place later on. So Delcroze loosens, gives the work that permission in a way, which is really cool for adults because we don't have permission to play very often. The exercises stimulated Paul's playful spirit. He responded to the opportunity to become musically playful through movement, and he enjoyed experiencing music in an embodied way. Kessler describes play as a place where our wildness and our humanity can safely meet. You guys something else to look at here? For adults, it's a way where our creative spirits are unbounded by the daily fetters of responsibility and rationality, or by any self-imposed fears and restrictions. It's a place where we can connect and express our inner selves without being hampered by judgments or concerns about what is right or wrong. It is just play. Hanya described a loosely choreographed movement experience that heightened her senses and enabled a deep connection for her. The day and the pavement were hot, and the traffic was noisy. The 4 participants moved gracefully and as one, and it was very flowing, very still, very gentle. And it was in the setting of the pavement, the heat, the traffic, it was all kind of surreal. There was communication and deep connection between the participants through the music and the movement. The harshness of the setting framed their gentle movements, making their demonstrations all the more ethereal. It was a celebration for her of all the sensory elements working in an unlikely harmony. All of the parts, the heat, the movement, the sun, came together to create an event that was very much in the present moment. In a section entitled Emotional Experiences, all of my participants related a time when they were moved to tears, either the expressiveness of the exercise or from the retelling of it to me in our interview. Their experiences were clearly transformational and positive. Delcroze pedagogy can initiate and encourage growth in the teachers and in the students, and this growth is not always what is expected. My findings then are in line with Monsieur Jacques Delcroze, who insists that teachers approach their students with compassion and caring. Children need, above all else, masters who love them and make a point of getting to know them, thereby acknowledging that a teacher's compassionate approach to her classes is of equal, if not greater importance than her knowledge of the subject. Questions? Oh, wait. There we are.
Very good.
Playing, yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My goodness, both of these presentations tonight, there's just so many things that we could talk about. There's no, I mean, this is like, we need about another 3 hours at least to just get going. So, I mean, Yeah, there's just tons and tons. I've had a great chance to work with Sharon and know of her work and have followed it for years. And I'm so pleased that we were able to get her to come and talk about this work, because actually there's this whole notion that I think everybody in this room would recognize about how there's quite often a deliberate severing in our rhetoric and in the way that we're taught to teach, where we're really in many cases sort of we're told to kind of we don't talk about that stuff, like even if it's there, like that's not, like we're not allowed to talk about that edge of what it is that's going on. And yet I think probably the reason that most anybody would ever become a teacher or a musician is because something had touched them to that level, like is because the spiritual like found its way into our practice. And so to be inspired by a teacher, or to be a teaching environment, or to have been uplifted and have a transformational musical experience, the way that Sharon's describing it, I mean, that to me seems to be kind of probably the most obvious origin story as to how most of us would have found our way to a Zoom like this, is because some point in our past we had that experience. So there's all kinds of stuff there. And then on Rebecca's bit, I'm a singer and spent years and years in the opera. There were just so many things that she was talking about that I recognize specifically as being useful in the voice studio. But then I bet everybody in this room who has done any amount of private instruction would also start to see opportunities here for probably most any of the different instruments. So it's plenty from me to get us going. Who wants to talk about any of the things? And we're going to keep them quick and short so we can get lots of them in. Go ahead, Sweet-Ming, unmute and tell us what you're thinking. Oh, you gotta unmute.
Yeah, hi. So nice to be here. I really enjoyed the two talks, and I like to talk a little bit about I find it so inspiring because there's two subjects that I'm very closely in touch with and thinking of all the time, and in practice as well. So the voice, I found that your exercise is so liberating. But I like to say one thing is about the knees, that because that when we because I use the knee, that bending and stretching a lot to help people to understand the freedom from the rigidity of the body and the bouncing feelings. And so in the voice, I found that I use that to help with understanding the breathing, and I found that your exercise is so excellent that because that from the Z that exercise just and you just using this bouncing element and releasing the knee from the lower to straighten the body to help this the whole exercise to come together. So I just want to point out that your exercise is excellent, and it's really help to use how to demonstrate that the release of the knee, that to help to free up the body to the end of the voice. And thank you very much. That has inspired me to extend my exercise also.
Very good. Anyone else? Yeah, Leslie.
Hi, I'm not in the laundry room anymore. Yeah, the eurythmics experience really does help singers, because I remember I had a woman who came to one class only, and I swear that was the only class she really got anything out of. But I mean, because she got so much from it, I could not figure out how to give her more about her singing. And she started talking about some role and how she now knew in retrospect how she could have sung that note based on our movement. I have no idea how I did that, but it went into her so deeply. And then I always felt like every other lesson of eurythmics was never hitting her that way, but it was very gratifying.
So interesting. And something in there about the spiritual too. So I mean, both parts of that. There's something about, I think voice lessons are unique in that we're not holding an instrument. And so the body is free to be engaged. Like you don't have to set something down to then get the body moving. And so voice lessons for years have involved that. Depending on how heavy and cumbersome your instrument is, it might lend itself to more or less of that. But we certainly can envision the studio teacher who would say, oh, let's set the cello aside for just a second, and let's take a moment and do any of those exercises. And now let's go back to that. If you look through our archives and find any of the conversations with Nicole Brockman, Nicole, who's in Indiana, Pennsylvania, she does a whole series of master classes where she does exactly that. She has people bring their instruments, they play something that they've been struggling with, and then she has them set the instrument aside. She does a series of let's move it around a bit, and then they go back and forth. And every time I've ever watched that masterclass, and I've seen her do it 20 times, it always has the same kinds of results. There's really something quite vibrant about just getting the personal body moving, which I think really kind of points us back here at a little bit of what Sharon is talking about as well. Sharon, how much of it do you think is, I don't know, I feel like some of the answer of maybe of what Rebecca's success is here with some of these motions, to me, is that it's so personally experienced, rather, like because they themselves are the person doing it, it sort of opens it up, as opposed to the all-knowing teacher who just tells us what to do. Is there any kind of point in the way you're thinking about things that the personal or the intimate is part of that recipe? You're muted, Sharon.
It's the student that, well, teachers sometimes have that experience as well.
Yeah.
It's both ways. So I think if you engage and you're on a very perceptive and intuitive level with the music and your student, then they're going to be open. Your student is going to be open to that because there's a communication channel that opens up through the music. So yeah, I think that's going to happen. Again, these instances that I read to you some of them were very, very profound. But my experience is that if I'm open to it, then any gesture that I do in a Delcros class or the music that I hear will take me to a point where I'm more receptive and more present in my space, in my time and space and energy for that matter. So, yeah.
Yeah, Chris. And then Rebecca.
Rebecca, I really enjoyed the different ideas you had for encouraging the singer to move. Thinking about what Sharon just said, I did have the question, in the voice lesson setting, the student can be so eager to have the teacher be prescriptive, whereas of course in the Dalcroze room, they're already engaged with this idea of just self-discovery or freedom or whatever word Sharon might use. What do you do, Rebecca, so that when they do throw the bowling ball, now what? Do I say, what did you notice? Like, yeah, their arm did freeze in the air, but I don't want to immediately go to the prescriptive side. I want to keep them in the discovery space, which isn't easy to always to instigate in the voice room. Okay, I hope that was a clear question.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually addresses what I was going to say with Sharon. I always ask the student to figure out some kind of a movement first that's reactive, that's connected to something else that they do. So they swing, they swim, they dance, they play tennis, they do some kind of throwing ball sport thing. Then I ask them to do a motion that they already know how to do, that has nothing to do with singing. I had a student who was a dancer, and she was a very rigid singer, and I asked her to dance around the room, just dance, and it was so, I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about looking at her dance, and she was moving around. And then I would ask her to sing while she was dancing, and then you can distill it down to the point where she could see herself dancing while she was standing still singing. So you can take that large body experience, that's something that they cultivate, they think of, they already know how to do it, so it's familiar to them, and it's not just another thing that this crazy woman's asking me to do. And they take that large experience, and your body remembers. Your body remembers all the flailing around and all the moving and all of that, all the nerves in your body and all of everything, or the spirit, like Sharon was saying, you remember it. And your body can be look like it's completely still, but we are still feeling it as a singer, and that makes a vastly more interesting experience for you as a performer and for the audience member. We have all seen terrified people just holding particularly still and being worried, or you see someone and they just have these gentle movements, and in their imagination, where they're no longer a human on a gravity plane and they've had these physical experiences, they're flying around the room in their imagination, in their nervous system. But we get to watch them have that experience in sort of a calm place. Does that sort of answer your question, Chris?
Cool. Who else? What are you thinking? Oh, Helen, and then Quan Ting.
Hi, I just really enjoyed the use of images always, and I've got my little Chinese drum, and I find that when students need to imagine a movement around an instrument, to have other quite external things of the imagination is important. And I also really appreciate the way that just interceding in a normal, straightforward instrumental lesson where things get bogged, just take them right out and get them doing something physical, even if it's jump up and down 3 times. Now we'll try it again. I mean, that's a ridiculous example, but in a very short lesson time, the kid is completely transformed. I think one of the challenging things I find as a teacher is often I have parents in the room and they are expecting a linear progress and wanting to know, when will my child be at this level by then? And there's a lot of expectations and tension. So this actively involving them in movement and singing, and also involving the parent, because I use Suzuki things and I have kids from age of 4 to 6, and involving the parent in singing along with them. It really helps with language, but also imagining the color of words, that words like we were talking about, I don't know, once was a dragon so fierce and so mean. What does fierce mean? You know, what does it mean? And how do you, how would you make a fierce sound with your bow? So we're using, I'm using ideas really that I'm stealing from Dalcroze in my early kindergarten of the air experiences, always in this playful way, even though I'll never have time to do a formal course or go to a thing. I just love these sessions, and thank you so much. So, and I really appreciated what Sharon said about the spirit, where do we stop? I love that cartoon. That really rings a bell with where I am with a lot of my students, getting them to see how beautiful that window is outside and how much you can learn, and finding that the intellectual side, if you pull that intellectual side back into the spiritual side and don't say that, there's the brain and then there's the body and they don't connect. If you can say, yes, they do. And it's that spirit that's the glue somehow. I don't know. Well done, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Quan Ting.
Thank you for both presentations. Sorry, my mind is a bit full right now because, I actually might have a say in our district curriculum. So I was wondering, sure, maybe you can point me somewhere. I'm definitely going to read your dissertation. I'm just wondering how you connect your thought and idea to those who those music educators that are not familiar with Dalcroze, because I'm totally convinced, but I'm trying to, I don't know, bring to another level. I don't know what Dalcroze curriculum look like in K through 5.
Okay, well, I had there is readings of literature on holistic education and on spirituality in education. Music specifically, you could go to Parker Palmer. Some of the people that I mentioned when I was talking about, Yob has done that. For Dalcroze and spirituality, there are some studies. There's mine. There's one from Vandermeer. What's her first name, Stephen? Liesel Vandermeer and Hebron have done some work on that from Australia and England. But I wondered if you, I could give you my email if you wanted to. I can send you my bib, right? There's a huge bibliography behind this. So I can easily do that. Would you like me to do that? Can I do that, Stephen?
Yeah, you guys can, in the chat, you can just individually talk to each other through the chat, and anybody can share anything to the whole group in the chat that you would like. So, and if either of you need
Okay.
help connecting, just reach out to me and we'll make it happen.
Okay. I did put the link to my dissertation in the chat, so
Yep.
anybody can get that and copy that there right now.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm appreciating, it was really nice, Sharon, hearing you talk about your work, just to get a renewed definition of the word spirituality. And so like, how are we using this word and what are we pointing it at and what are we not pointing it at, and separating it from religion, is a real challenge, I think, for many people. You more than once talked about being present, which is wording that I do use in my teaching sometimes, and we talk about that and that kind of attention. So in my work, we talk about awareness to the unfolding moment or the unfolding progression of time, or what it means to sort of be in the moment, or to be present, or to to be awake in your own performance, to sort of to lead in the performance, as opposed to chasing after the performance as though something's making you play a
There's
bunch of moves.
a bit of that realization that we're dealing with something that we cannot know, right? In the spiritual, it's the ineffable. I like that term. It's
Yeah.
dealing with the veil between us and art, right? There's art and there's us, and there's something that happens in there that is connected with love and connected with communication. So there's that. But I think when that, you can't quite qualify that, because if we know what it was, it wouldn't be there, right? Like, it's bigger than us. We are not the end product here, right? So there's a lot to learn, but there's a very big chunk of humility to go with it.
Yeah. So I was just thinking that, like, how many other classes or places or opportunities in anybody's education of any age, is that kind of built in the way, and it really is, I think, built into many Dalcroze settings. The idea, even just the idea of the self-discovery, like there's sort of a turn in the way that this work has come up. It's quite different than the way a lot of other educational practices have directed us. And so there's something in this pedagogy that where we're sort of aware that there's more that we can't quite know yet. And so
Yeah.
you just need to be in the practice, or to
Yeah.
to be present.
I think you can set, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to be present,
sorry.
to open up some doors. So it opens up some doors that we're like curious what's on the other side, that it's harder sometimes, or it's just maybe not part of the practice of many other teaching styles.
Well, there's many, those music teaching styles I've seen that are appalling, 1 and 2, and you know what I'm talking about. So you have to, or teaching for the elements, as if, it has its place. Like, you want students to be able to talk about music in a classroom setting. So here's the elements of music. Let's talk, let's listen, what's happening with the volume. So you can train the listening that way. But if you limit it to that, then you are not really engaging in an artistic experience. You're learning about music, but you're not really doing music. You're analyzing it.
Yep.
So, you can do that, but also let's give them a chance. Let's say, next Tuesday, we're going to listen and move to Sorcerer's Apprentice or something, that whatever's age appropriate, right? But again, it's I got into a little bit of trouble, not too much, but using the word spiritual with a former principal. And I said, well, and this is right after I did the dissertation, and I knew that this was something where we have to go in Ontario, but moving the Board of Education is like dragging a dinosaur into the 23rd century. It's just not going to happen very easily. So, oh no, she said, we can't do that. We might get into trouble. Okay, that about sums it up right there.
Yeah, well, it's a real challenge for sure. There's so much here. Just that last statement of how is it that we're going to, be able to use maybe the word and definitely the spirit of what you are presenting. How is it that we can take this knowing and center it? It's not accidental and it's not frivolous, but in many ways, I think many people who are part of this community would agree it's quite central to what it is that we believe, or that we know that we are doing. And so how do we center that as we did talk about what we do in a way that people who haven't been in this community could understand and be able to value. We're going to need we're going to need more than another hour to talk this one out.
Yeah, we can't call it spirituality. That's the only thing, is you can call it being present. You can call it awareness. You can
Yeah.
call it enlightenment if you want. I guess you can go there, but new learnings, anything but that. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
tricky.
hard.
Well,
Too
friends, we're
bad.
about at time. Does anybody want to offer up one more sort of end? Go ahead, Leslie.
I was just gonna say, one time I sort of had a kid who was super religious, it was in pre-college. And we were just doing some kind of breathing exercise and he refused to do it. Because he thought that it wasn't Christian or something. I said, well, just don't do it. And that was the only time in my entire experience of teaching anyone, but he was firmly against anything that would touch on that,
Yeah, well,
Is he a
and that's
congressman now?
say it again, Chris.
Not, I said, is he a congressman now? It wasn't necessary though. I should.
No, it's good, and it's a fine way to end it. There's I'll just give you the shortest teeny story. My father is a Christian minister. He was with the same congregation for 35 years. He's retired. I had a very lovely upbringing. I'm very proud of my parents and my family and for the things that they do. But I was very much raised with a very specific version of the word spirituality and what sort of counts and what doesn't, and what's scary and what's not. And, that is to say, if something gets a little too close to this other thing, all of a sudden, like all kinds of, people get all wound up pretty quickly. But there's something in this work that when it is real, like if we're really doing the work, that it touches you. Like it is enlightening and it is rewarding and it is life-giving and so I don't have any answers here other than to say I totally know what Sharon's talking about, and I see the nods in the room, and I think so many people do. And so we can all maybe take some time to just be thinking a little bit like, yeah, what do we do about this? Like, how do we sort of describe the power without affronting the 15-year-old pre-college student who was raised in a certain house that made him believe that if that you can only feel awe one way, and so we have to be sort of cautious of that, I guess. Oh, Helen and Sharon, we're running out of time.
I'm sorry, but yeah, sorry, just wanted to say with the connection that we need more of connection in our world today. So even that experience, and even you can steer your students towards that did you experience a connection? So as we get more used to that, we're connected to all people, all things, all nations. It's a movement towards peace.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm done now.
You're good. And Helen, the last word, and then we're gonna sign
Very
off.
quickly, connecting students to their cultural roots. So that student, how did that student think Bach got his inspiration from God? That's where you can tap into the cultural background of the child with diligence, and it might be something as simple as a football team that they go for in another child. So you have to find material that relates to where that child's spirit is, I think, and to know that, but to do that sensitively. Yeah.
All very good. Friends, I think we did it. I think we're right on the mark here with what a virtual Dalcroze meetup hopes to be. We almost never answer any real questions. We actually seem to just bring up all sorts of cool research, great work that people are doing, and get just far into it just enough to leave us wanting a whole lot more. So I encourage you to reach out to Sharon and Rebecca. If you have trouble finding them, reach out to Veronica or me, and please keep the conversations going. Consider how all of your work is also valid research, and we're curious about the things you're thinking about and the challenges you're running into in your different settings, and how Dalcroze sort of ideas start to overlap with any of that. Emma just appeared. Emma, do you want to say hi before we sign off?
Hey everybody, I just wanted to say thank you everybody we've had some really generous support during this giving season. We are raising some money for scholarships, and if you are so inclined to be generous and to help support, we have some upcoming master classes. Our new season will be announced shortly, I believe.
Shortly.
My colleagues can speak more to that. But we are I can't believe we're at 51. look at this amazing group and what an amazing meeting tonight. I've been here, but this has been the main person on the show, as it were, over to the left. She's very excited by you guys. And so I just wanted to say thank you all for continuing to be here and create this incredible community.
Very good. Veronica, you want to sign us off?
Good night. Good morning.
Thanks, everyone. We'll talk
Thank
to you
you
in
so
the-
much.
Talk to you in the new year. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again, Sharon and Rebecca.
Good to see you.